The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's soup kitchen buzzed overhead as Sarah ladled another serving of beef stew, her wedding ring catching the harsh light. 6 months since the car accident took everything: her husband, her unborn child, her faith. The line of hungry faces blurred together until she reached him. The quiet man with kind eyes who never spoke, never complained, just smiled and whispered, "Thank you," like a prayer. Tonight felt different. The kitchen was emptying when Sarah collapsed, her grief finally overwhelming her. Through tear-blurred vision, she saw the homeless man kneel beside her on the cold linoleum. His touch was warm, impossibly warm, and when he spoke her name, a name she'd never told him, everything changed. "Sarah," he said softly, "I've been waiting for you to let me help." The fluorescent lights dimmed, but somehow the room grew brighter. His eyes held starlight, and suddenly Sarah understood why some encounters feel like destiny, why some strangers feel like coming home. But who was he really, and why had he chosen her broken heart to heal? Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she stared into those impossible eyes. The warmth from his touch spread through her trembling body, chasing away the bone-deep cold that had lived inside her since that November morning when the police officer knocked on her door. She tried to speak, but only managed a whisper. "How do you know my name?" He smiled then, her expression so gentle it made her chest ache with something she'd forgotten existed: hope. "I know many things about you, Sarah. I know you blame yourself for working late that night. I know you think God abandoned you when you needed him most. I know you come here not just to serve others, but because being around broken people makes you feel less alone in your brokenness." The words hit her like physical blows, each one stripping away another layer of the careful walls she'd built around her heart. "Stop," she whispered, but she didn't pull away from his touch. "I know you threw away the baby clothes you'd been collecting," he continued, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that seemed to vibrate in her bones, pink and yellow and soft green, because you wanted to be surprised. "I know you sleep in the guest room now because your bed still smells like David's cologne. And I know you haven't cried, really cried, since the funeral, because you're afraid if you start, you'll never stop." Sarah's vision blurred as tears she'd been holding back for months finally broke free. "Who are you?" she sobbed, her voice breaking on each word. "I'm someone who's been watching over you," he said simply. "Someone who's seen you give everything you have left to feed strangers, even when you barely remember to feed yourself. Someone who's witnessed your kindness in the darkness and knows that your heart, though broken, is exactly what this world needs." The homeless man, though Sarah was beginning to understand he was anything but homeless, helped her sit up against the industrial sink. The kitchen around them seemed to shimmer at the edges, as if reality itself was becoming fluid. "My name is Gabriel," he said, and somehow Sarah wasn't surprised. "And I need you to know that every moment of your pain has been felt. Every tear counted. Every prayer you thought went unheard was treasured." "Prayers," Sarah laughed bitterly. "I stopped praying months ago. What's the point when you screamed at the hospital ceiling, begging for just one more heartbeat from your son?" Gabriel interrupted gently. "That was a prayer. When you whispered David's name into your pillow, asking him to wait for you, that was a prayer. When you chose to come here tonight instead of swallowing those pills you've been carrying in your purse for 3 weeks, that was the most powerful prayer of all." Sarah's hand flew to her purse, her face pale. Inside, tucked behind her wallet, the small bottle of sleeping pills seemed to burn against the leather. She'd never told anyone, had barely admitted it to herself. How could you possibly? "Because I've been here all along," Gabriel said. "In the moments when you thought you were most alone, I was there, not watching from some distant heaven, but right beside you, kneeling in your grief, carrying what you couldn't bear." The kitchen lights flickered back to their normal harsh fluorescence, but Gabriel's presence remained luminous. He stood slowly, extending his hand to help her up. "This is just the beginning, Sarah. Your heart isn't meant to stay broken. Your story isn't meant to end in that empty house with a bottle of pills. There's so much more waiting for you if you're willing to trust again." Sarah stared at his outstretched hand, knowing that taking it would change everything. Behind her lay 6 months of carefully constructed numbness, the familiar weight of grief that had become almost comforting in its consistency. Ahead lay terrifying uncertainty, the possibility of hope, and the chance that miracles might still exist in a world that had felt utterly devoid of magic. She reached up and took Gabriel's hand, feeling warmth flood through her as their fingers intertwined. In that moment, for the first time since November, Sarah chose to believe. The soup kitchen at St. Mary's smelled of industrial disinfectant and overcooked vegetables, but Maya had grown to find comfort in the familiar chaos. She ladled steaming portions of beef stew into worn plastic bowls, offering each person a smile that felt more genuine than any expression she'd managed in months. The work kept her hands busy and her mind occupied, creating small barriers against the grief that waited to ambush her in quiet moments. "Extra bread today, Mrs. Chen," she said, slipping an additional roll onto the elderly woman's tray. Mrs. Chen's weathered face crinkled into a grateful smile, and she shuffled toward the long tables where mismatched chairs hosted an unlikely congregation of the forgotten. Maya had started volunteering here 3 weeks after David's funeral, when the casseroles from well-meaning neighbors had stopped coming and the house had grown too quiet to bear. Her sister Rachel thought she was having some kind of breakdown, choosing to spend her evenings with strangers instead of accepting dinner invitations or returning to her job at the marketing firm. "You can't save everyone, Maya," Rachel had said during their last conversation. "You couldn't save David, and you can't save these people either." But Rachel didn't understand. Maya wasn't trying to save anyone. She was trying to remember what it felt like to be useful, to matter in some small way. The people who came through St. Mary's doors didn't offer her pitying looks or awkward condolences. They simply accepted her service, and in return, they served as living proof that survival was possible, even when everything fell apart. Tonight's crowd was typical, a mix of regulars and faces she didn't recognize. The regular attendees had their own unspoken hierarchy and customs. Tommy, the Vietnam veteran with shaking hands, always sat in the corner facing the door. Sarah, barely 20 but already weathered by life on the streets, preferred the table near the serving line where she could charm extra portions from the volunteers. Then there was the man Maya had privately named John, though she'd never asked his real name. He appeared sporadically, maybe once or twice a week, always sitting alone at the table furthest from the kitchen. Unlike the others, he never seemed desperate or hurried. He ate slowly, deliberately, as if each meal was a meditation rather than a necessity. Tonight he wore the same faded brown jacket she'd seen him in before, his dark hair touched with silver at the temples. There was something unsettling about his presence, though Maya couldn't identify why. He looked to be in his 40s, with olive skin and deep-set eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing. When their gazes occasionally met across the room, she felt an odd flutter of recognition, as if she should know him from somewhere. "That one's different," said Helen, the kitchen coordinator, following Maya's glance. Helen had been running the soup kitchen for 15 years and prided herself on reading people quickly. Been coming around for about a month now, polite as anything, but there's something about him that doesn't quite fit. Maya ladled another portion of stew. "Different how?" "Can't put my finger on it. He's clean for one thing. Not fresh showered clean, but not street dirty either. And his clothes, they're worn but not torn, if you know what I mean. Like he chooses to be here instead of needing to be here." As if sensing their discussion, the man looked up from his meal. His eyes found Maya's across the room, and this time he didn't look away. For a moment that stretched longer than it should have. They simply regarded each other. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, embarrassed to be caught staring, but something in his expression held her attention. It wasn't romantic interest or even casual curiosity. It was something deeper, more knowing, as if he could see the grief she carried and understood its weight. When she finally broke eye contact, her hands were trembling slightly as she served the next person in line. The interaction had lasted only seconds, but it left her feeling exposed and strangely hopeful in a way that made no sense. The evening wound down with the usual cleanup routine. Maya helped stack chairs and wipe tables while the remaining guests filtered out into the November night. She was scrubbing a particularly stubborn pot when Helen appeared at her elbow. "Your mysterious friend left this for you," Helen said, holding out a small piece of paper folded once. Maya dried her hands before taking it, her heart rate inexplicably quickening. "He asked for me specifically? Didn't say a word. Just pointed at you and handed me this before he left." The paper felt ordinary between her fingers, but Maya found herself hesitating to open it. Whatever was written inside would change something, though she couldn't say what or how. She knew. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the industrial kitchen, surrounded by the mundane realities of cleanup and routine, she unfolded the note and read the 4 words that would shift the trajectory of everything she thought she understood about loss, faith, and the nature of miracles themselves. The morning light felt different somehow, softer around the edges as it filtered through the kitchen window, where Sarah sat with her untouched coffee. She'd been awake since 4, replaying yesterday's strange encounter with the homeless man at Sacred Heart. Something about his presence had lodged itself in her chest like a warm stone, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. Michael padded into the kitchen, his hair disheveled from sleep, and kissed the top of her head. "You're up early again." Couldn't sleep. She leaned into his touch, grateful for the solid warmth of him. "I keep thinking about that man yesterday. Gabriel, the one who helped with the spill?" Michael poured himself coffee, studying her face with the careful attention she'd grown used to over the past 2 years. Everyone watched her now, measuring her moods, cataloging her expressions for signs of breaking. "What about him?" Sarah struggled to find words that wouldn't sound foolish. How could she explain that Gabriel's presence had felt like stepping into a church after months in the wilderness, that when he'd touched her shoulder, she'd felt something she thought had died with Emma? He seemed, I don't know, different. Michael sat across from her, wrapping his hands around his mug. Different how? Like he belonged there, but also like he belonged somewhere else entirely. She shook her head, frustrated by her inability to articulate the feeling. "It's stupid. I'm probably just..." "It's not stupid." His voice was gentle, the same tone he'd used when she'd insisted she could hear Emma calling for her in the middle of the night during those first terrible weeks. "Maybe helping there is bringing something back for you. Something good." Sarah nodded, though she wasn't sure that captured it either. It wasn't about the volunteering itself, though that had become a lifeline she hadn't expected. It was Gabriel specifically, the way his weathered face had transformed when he smiled, how his eyes seemed to hold depths that shouldn't exist in someone living rough on the streets. The drive to Sacred Heart that afternoon took her through the part of downtown she'd once avoided, where broken windows stared out like empty eyes and doorways sheltered more than just shade. Now she noticed things differently, the way people moved with purpose even when they had nowhere to go, the small kindnesses exchanged between those who had nothing material to offer each other. Inside the kitchen, the familiar chaos of preparation was already underway. Sarah tied on her apron and fell into the rhythm of chopping vegetables, letting the repetitive motion quiet her restless thoughts. She found herself glancing toward the dining area, searching for a familiar figure among the early arrivals. Looking for someone. Rita appeared beside her, wielding a ladle with the authority of a general's baton. The man from yesterday, Gabriel. I wondered if he'd come back. Rita's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering across her features. Gabriel's been coming here longer than most. 3 years, maybe 4. Never missed more than a few days at a time. What's his story? That's not really how it works here, honey. People share what they want to share, when they're ready. Rita's voice carried decades of wisdom earned in places like this. But I will say this, that man's got something special about him. Seen him talk people back from edges I didn't think they could come back from. As if summoned by their conversation, Gabriel appeared in the doorway between kitchen and dining room. Today he wore a different coat, still worn but cleaner, and his silver hair was combed back from his face. When he spotted Sarah, his entire being seemed to brighten. "Sarah." He spoke her name like a benediction. "May I?" She nodded, wiping her hands on her apron as he approached. Up close, she noticed details that had escaped her yesterday. The unusual clarity of his grey eyes, the way he moved with fluid grace, despite his apparent age, how his presence seemed to create a pocket of calm in the surrounding bustle. "I wanted to thank you," he said, his voice carrying that same musical quality she remembered. "Thank me? I should be thanking you. You helped clean up my mess." Gabriel smiled, and again Sarah felt that strange stirring in her chest, like a bird testing wings it had forgotten how to use. "Not for that, for seeing me." The words hit her with unexpected force. She understood, suddenly and completely, what he meant. In this place where society's forgotten gathered for warmth and sustenance, being truly seen was perhaps the rarest gift of all. "I lost someone," she found herself saying, the words emerging without conscious decision. "My daughter, 2 years ago." Gabriel's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes deepened, as if he was receiving more than just information. "Emma." Sarah's breath caught. She was certain she hadn't mentioned Emma's name yesterday, not to Gabriel or anyone else in his presence. "How did you?" "Grief has its own language," he said softly, "and love leaves echoes that some of us can hear." Before she could respond, Rita called for help with the soup kettles, and the moment fractured into ordinary demands. But as Gabriel moved away to take his usual seat, Sarah felt the warm stone in her chest pulse with something that might have been hope. The morning fog clung to the city streets like a shroud, muffling the sounds of early commuters as Sarah walked towards St. Mary's. Her conversation with Thomas the night before had left her restless, tossing in bed until dawn broke through her apartment windows. She'd replayed his words over and over, searching for some logical explanation for the comfort she'd felt in his presence. The way her grief seemed to lighten when he spoke. "Faith isn't about having all the answers," he'd said. But Sarah had built her life on answers, on concrete plans and measurable outcomes. Even her marriage to David had followed a careful timeline: college sweethearts, graduation, engagement, wedding, house, and then the trying. 2 years of hope and disappointment before the doctors delivered their verdict with clinical precision. The soup kitchen was already bustling when she arrived, volunteers preparing for the lunch service. Sister Margaret looked up from counting donations, her weathered face creasing into a smile. "You're early today, dear." "Couldn't sleep," Sarah admitted, tying her apron around her waist. "Sister, can I ask you something? The man who comes in sometimes, Thomas, how long has he been coming here?" Sister Margaret paused, her hands stilling on the canned goods. "Thomas? Oh, he's been around for... well, it feels like he's always been here in a way." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. He seems different from the others." "We're all different, Sarah, and we're all the same." The nun's eyes held a knowing glint. "Some people carry light with them, don't they? You can see it if you look closely enough." Before Sarah could ask what she meant, the doors opened and the first wave of people began filing in. The usual faces appeared. Mrs. Chen with her shopping cart full of belongings, the young veteran who never spoke but always nodded his thanks, the family with 3 small children who came in every Tuesday like clockwork. But Thomas wasn't among them. Sarah found herself watching the door between serving portions, ladling soup and slicing bread while scanning for his familiar figure. An hour passed, then 2. The lunch rush began to thin, and still no sign of him. Looking for someone? Sarah turned to find James, a regular volunteer, restacking empty trays beside her. The older gentleman with the grey beard? Thomas? James frowned. "Can't say I know anyone by that name." "What's he look like?" "Tall, kind eyes. Always wears this old brown coat." Sarah's voice trailed off as James shook his head. "Doesn't ring a bell, and I've been volunteering here for 3 years." "You sure about the name?" A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She excused herself and found Sister Margaret in the kitchen, supervising the cleanup. Sister, James says he doesn't know Thomas, but you just mentioned him. The older woman turned, her expression thoughtful. Did I? Sometimes I think I know so many people. The faces blur together. She studied Sarah's face carefully. But if he's important to you, perhaps that's what matters. That evening, Sarah found herself walking the streets near the shelter, searching. She told herself it was ridiculous. The city was huge, and homeless people moved around constantly. But something pulled her forward, past the usual corners where people gathered, through the maze of alleys behind the financial district. She found him sitting on a bench in a small pocket park she'd never noticed before, despite walking these streets for months. He looked up as she approached, unsurprised, as if he'd been waiting. "I looked for you today," she said, settling beside him on the bench. "I was around." His voice carried that same gentle authority that had calmed her the night before. Sometimes we see what we need to see when we need to see it. That's not really an answer, isn't it? Thomas turned to face her fully. "Sarah, you came looking for me because you're starting to understand something. You felt it last night, didn't you? The possibility that there's more to this world than what you can measure and control." The fog was lifting, revealing the first stars in the darkening sky. Sarah watched them appear one by one, pinpricks of light in the vast darkness. "I used to believe," she whispered. "When I was little, I believed in everything. Guardian angels, miracles, happy endings. But life has a way of wearing that down. Life has a way of testing it," Thomas corrected gently. "Faith isn't a feeling, Sarah. It's a choice you make every day, especially when the evidence suggests otherwise." A warm breeze stirred the air around them, carrying the scent of jasmine from somewhere nearby. Sarah closed her eyes and, for just a moment, let herself imagine that Thomas was right, that she wasn't alone in her grief, that somewhere in the vast machinery of the universe, there was still room for grace. When she opened her eyes, Thomas was watching her with infinite patience. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "pay attention to the small things. Sometimes the biggest miracles come in the smallest packages." The rain had stopped by the time Elena reached St. Mary's, but the pavement still glistened under the streetlights like scattered diamonds. She pulled her jacket tighter as she approached the community center's back entrance, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp October air. Thursday evening prep had become her anchor, the one constant in a life that felt increasingly untethered. Inside, the familiar sounds of clanging pots and cheerful chatter greeted her. Margaret was already at the stove, stirring a massive pot of vegetable soup, her grey hair escaping from its neat bun in wispy tendrils. "Elena, dear, perfect timing. Could you start on the bread station? We're expecting a bigger crowd tonight with this weather." Elena nodded, grateful for the routine. As she arranged loaves and began slicing, her mind wandered to the strange encounter from earlier in the week. Thomas hadn't returned since Monday, and his absence felt more pronounced than it should have. She'd found herself scanning the faces in line, listening for his distinctive voice, disappointed each time he failed to appear. "You seemed distracted tonight," observed Father Martinez, appearing beside her with an armload of paper plates. His kind eyes crinkled with concern. "Everything all right?" "Just thinking about someone," Elena replied, not quite ready to articulate the complexity of her thoughts about Thomas. "One of our regulars hasn't been in. Thomas Hartwell. Older gentleman, always impeccably polite." Father Martinez paused, a flicker of something crossing his features. "Tall man, grey beard, unusual eyes. You know him?" "We've spoken a few times." The priest's tone was careful, measured. "He's an interesting individual, deep faith, despite his circumstances." Before Elena could ask more, Margaret called for everyone to take their positions. The doors opened at 6 sharp, and the familiar rhythm began. Elena ladled soup into bowls, exchanged pleasantries, and tried to ignore the growing disappointment as Thomas failed to appear. It was nearly 8 when she finally saw him. He stood at the back of the dwindling line, somehow managing to look both disheveled and dignified in his worn coat. Their eyes met across the room, and he offered that enigmatic smile that had puzzled her since their first meeting. I was beginning to think you'd found better accommodations, Elena said as he approached her station, surprised by the relief in her own voice. Just taking care of some business, Thomas replied, accepting his bowl with those graceful hands. Though I confess I missed our conversations. Stay after? The words escaped before Elena could stop them. I mean, if you'd like to talk. I usually help with cleanup and I'd like that very much. An hour later, they sat on the small bench outside the community center. The night air was crisp but not uncomfortable, and the earlier crowd had dispersed into the city's shadows. Thomas seemed more relaxed here in the quiet, less guarded somehow. You mentioned the other day that you come here because you need to, Elena began, studying his profile in the amber streetlight. What did you mean? Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. Everyone needs purpose, Elena. Some find it in careers, families, ambitions. Others, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Others find it in service, in being present when presence matters most. That sounds almost like a calling. Perhaps it is. His grey eyes found hers, and for a moment, Elena felt that same unsettling sensation she'd experienced during their first real conversation, as if he could see straight through to her soul. What about you? What brought you to this place? The question she'd been dreading, yet somehow knew was coming. Elena looked down at her hands, still slightly damp from washing dishes. Grief, if I'm honest. My husband died 8 months ago, and I needed to feel useful again, to matter to someone. David was a fortunate man. Elena's head snapped up. I never told you his name. For the first time since she'd known him, Thomas looked uncomfortable. Color rose in his weathered cheeks, and he seemed to struggle for words. You must have mentioned it, perhaps when we first met? But Elena was certain she hadn't. She'd been careful not to talk about David, protective of those memories. The certainty of it made her stomach flutter with unease. I should go, Thomas said, suddenly rising from the bench. It's getting late, and you shouldn't be walking to your car alone at this hour. Thomas, wait. But he was already moving away, his long strides carrying him toward the intersection. Elena watched until he disappeared around the corner, her mind spinning with questions that seemed to multiply rather than resolve. As she walked to her car, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just shifted between them. The comfortable mystery of Thomas had taken on a sharper edge, one that both frightened and intrigued her in equal measure. The morning brought news that shattered what remained of Sarah's carefully constructed world. She stared at the phone in her trembling hand, Dr. Martinez's words echoing in her mind like a death knell. The experimental treatment had failed. 6 months, maybe less. She set the phone down with mechanical precision and walked to the kitchen window, watching the rain streak down the glass in jagged lines. Behind her, coffee grew cold in the pot, the morning routine abandoned mid-motion when the call had come. Everything felt suspended, as if the world had paused to accommodate this new, devastating reality. The knock at her door came 3 hours later, soft but persistent. Sarah hadn't moved from the window, hadn't changed from her pajamas, hadn't done anything except exist in the space between before and after. She almost didn't answer, but something made her feet carry her across the living room. Gabriel stood on her doorstep, somehow both exactly as she expected and completely surprising. His homeless man's clothes were gone, replaced by simple dark jeans and a grey sweater that made his silver hair look intentional rather than neglected. But his eyes, those remained the same, ancient and knowing. I heard, he said simply. Heard what? The words came out sharper than she intended. That I'm dying? Join the club. Everyone dies eventually. He stepped inside without invitation, moving through her space as if he belonged there. That you're afraid? Sarah laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. Afraid? I'm terrified. There's a difference. She closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. How did you even find me? I never gave you my address. I know many things, Sarah. Your address is among the least significant. Right, Because you're an angel, she pushed off from the door, pacing now, energy born of desperation flooding her system. You know what? Fine. Let's say I believe you. Let's say angels are real and you're one of them. Where were you when Emma needed you? Where were you when David's car slid off that icy road? Where were you when I was sitting in doctors' offices getting death sentences disguised as medical terminology? Gabriel watched her pace, his expression patient but pained. I was where I've always been, where I am now. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Sarah stopped moving, fury rising in her chest like a tide. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not the dying, it's the hope. For a moment, when you said what you said at the soup kitchen, I actually thought... She pressed her hands to her face. God, I'm such a fool. Hope isn't foolish. Hope is cruel. Hope is what makes you believe in experimental treatments and second opinions and miracles that never come. She dropped her hands, meeting his gaze directly. Hope is what makes a grown woman think that maybe, just maybe, an angel appeared in her life to fix everything. Gabriel moved closer, his presence somehow both comforting and overwhelming. I didn't come to fix everything, Sarah. Some things can't be fixed, only accepted. Then what's the point? What's the point of angels or faith or any of it if you can't actually help? Who says I can't help? The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. Sarah searched his face for answers, for some hint of what he was offering. The treatment failed, she said quietly. Dr. Martinez was very clear. There are no more options. Doctors see with limited vision. They understand bodies, not souls. My soul won't keep my heart beating, won't it? Sarah felt something shift in the room, a change in the air pressure that made her skin tingle. Gabriel's eyes seemed to catch light that wasn't there, and for a moment she could have sworn she saw something else in his face, something vast and terrible and beautiful. What are you saying? I'm saying that faith and hope aren't the same thing. Hope looks to the future. Faith exists in the present moment, in the choice to believe that love transcends everything we think we understand about how the world works. That sounds like something you'd embroider on a pillow. Gabriel smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. You're not ready yet, but you will be. Ready for what? To choose. Before she could ask what he meant, he was moving toward the door with that same fluid grace she'd noticed at the soup kitchen. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. The choice isn't whether to believe in miracles, Sarah. The choice is whether to believe in love. Everything else follows from there. Then he was gone, leaving Sarah alone with questions that felt too large for her small, rain-soaked apartment. Outside, the storm continued, but something had changed. The silence felt different now, not empty but full of possibility. The morning after Samuel's disappearance, Clara found herself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at a stranger's reflection. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her skin had taken on a pallor that reminded her uncomfortably of those final weeks with David. She pressed her palms against the cool porcelain sink, trying to ground herself in something real. The phone had been ringing all morning. Margaret from the soup kitchen, wondering if she'd heard from Samuel. Detective Morrison with updates that weren't really updates. Even her sister calling from Portland, having somehow sensed something was wrong despite Clara's efforts to maintain their weekly check-ins with carefully crafted normalcy. She ignored them all. Instead, she found herself pulling on yesterday's clothes and walking the 6 blocks to Riverside Park, where Samuel often spent his afternoons. The October air bit at her cheeks, but she welcomed the sharp clarity it brought. The park was nearly empty except for a few joggers and an elderly man feeding pigeons near the fountain. Clara approached the bench where she'd first seen Samuel reading his worn leather book. The metal was cold through her jeans as she sat down, scanning the sparse crowd for any sign of his familiar figure. A woman pushing a stroller smiled at her in passing, and Clara managed a weak nod in return, wondering if this stranger could see the desperation written across her face. You look like someone who's lost something important. The voice came from behind her, and Clara turned to find a young woman with paint-stained fingers and kind eyes. She was probably in her 20s, with the sort of effortless beauty that belonged in coffee shop windows and poetry readings. "I suppose I am," Clara admitted, surprised by her own honesty. The woman gestured to the empty space on the bench. "Mind if I sit?" "I'm Luna, by the way. I've seen you here before, with the older gentleman. Samuel, right?" Clara's heart skipped. "You know him?" "Not well, but we've talked a few times. He has this way of appearing when you need him most." Luna settled beside her, pulling a sketchbook from her canvas bag. "He helped me through a rough patch last spring when my mom was dying. Never preached or offered empty platitudes, just listened." "When did you last see him?" Luna's brow furrowed in concentration. "Tuesday, maybe?" "He seemed different that day, more purposeful, if that makes sense, like he was preparing for something." She glanced at Clara's expression and quickly added, "I'm sure he's fine. Samuel strikes me as someone who can take care of himself." But Clara wasn't sure of anything anymore. The strange conversation about angels, his uncanny ability to say exactly what she needed to hear, the way he'd vanished without a trace. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite assemble. Luna opened her sketchbook, revealing page after page of detailed drawings. Park scenes mostly, but Clara's breath caught when she saw a familiar figure rendered in charcoal and careful shading. Samuel, sitting on this very bench, his face turned toward the sky with an expression of profound peace. "He's beautiful," Clara whispered, tracing the edge of the page with her finger. "You've captured something in his eyes that I never noticed before." "He has an old soul," Luna agreed. "Sometimes when he looked at me, I felt like he could see straight through to my heart." It should have been unsettling, but somehow it wasn't. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the pigeons peck at scattered breadcrumbs. Clara found herself thinking about faith again, about the conversation with Samuel that had left her so shaken. What if she'd been looking at everything wrong? What if the miracle wasn't supposed to be David's recovery, but something else entirely? "Can I ask you something?" Clara said suddenly. "Do you believe in angels?" Luna's laugh was soft and musical. "You mean like the ones in Renaissance paintings? Wings and halos and all that?" "I mean real ones. Here, among us." The question seemed to give Luna pause. She closed her sketchbook carefully, considering her words. "My mom used to say that angels don't always look like we expect them to. She said they come as nurses and teachers and strangers who help you change a flat tire in the rain." Luna's eyes grew distant. "The night she died, I swear I felt something in the room with us. Not frightening, just present, loving." Clara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Samuel told me angels walk among us as ordinary people. I thought he was speaking metaphorically." "Maybe he was. Or maybe," Luna stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder, "maybe he knows something we don't." She squeezed Clara's shoulder gently. "Either way, I don't think you've lost him forever. People like Samuel have a way of finding their way back to where they're needed most." As Luna walked away, Clara remained on the bench, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across the empty park. The morning after her encounter with Gabriel, Sarah woke with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. The grief was still there, nestled deep in her chest like a familiar weight, but something had shifted. She found herself humming as she made coffee, the melody of a half-remembered lullaby her mother used to sing. At the soup kitchen, she moved with renewed purpose, ladling portions with genuine smiles instead of the mechanical motions that had carried her through the past weeks. Mrs. Chen noticed immediately. "You look different today, dear," the elderly volunteer observed, tying her apron with practiced efficiency. "Lighter somehow." Sarah paused, considering her words carefully. How could she explain Gabriel's visit without sounding completely unhinged? "I think I had a breakthrough last night, about accepting help from others." Mrs. Chen's knowing smile suggested she understood more than Sarah had actually said. Sometimes the universe sends us exactly what we need, even when we don't recognize it at first. The lunch rush began earlier than usual, a steady stream of familiar faces mixed with newcomers seeking warmth and sustenance. Sarah scanned each person who entered, hoping to see Gabriel's gentle eyes and weathered hands, but he remained absent. Disappointment tugged at her, though she tried to push it aside. Around 2 o'clock, when the crowd had thinned to a manageable trickle, Detective Martinez appeared in the doorway. Sarah's stomach dropped at his serious expression. She'd grown to associate his visits with bad news, and today's demeanor suggested this wouldn't be different. "Sarah, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" She followed him to a quiet corner, wiping her hands nervously on her apron. "What is it?" "We found Gabriel's body this morning." The words hit her like a physical blow. The ladle slipped from her fingers, clattering against the concrete floor. "That's impossible." "He was at my apartment last night. We talked for hours." Martinez's brow furrowed with concern. "Sarah, Gabriel Restrepo died 3 days ago. We found him in an abandoned building downtown. The coroner estimates he'd been dead for at least 72 hours. The kitchen seemed to tilt around her. Sarah gripped the edge of a nearby table, her knuckles white with tension. "No, you're wrong. He came to see me. He helped me understand things about my brother, about forgiveness. We shared tea. I think maybe you should sit down." Martinez's voice carried the gentle tone he probably reserved for delivering the worst kind of news to families. Sometimes grief can manifest in ways that feel very real to us. But Sarah was already shaking her head, backing away from him. "I didn't hallucinate him. He knew things, specific things about David that no one else could have known. He told me about the argument we had the night before the accident. Details you might have shared here at the kitchen, things Gabriel could have overheard before he died. Then explain this." Sarah rushed to her purse, fumbling through its contents until she found what she was looking for. She pulled out the small wooden cross Gabriel had carved, its surface smooth and warm against her palm. "He made this for me last night. I watched him carve it." Martinez examined the cross carefully, turning it over in his hands. His expression shifted from concerned skepticism to something more complex, more unsettled. "Where exactly did you say you found this?" "I told you. Gabriel carved it for me, at my kitchen table." Her voice rose with each word, drawing curious glances from other volunteers. Mrs. Chen approached them cautiously. "Is everything all right?" "Mrs. Chen," Sarah said desperately, "you remember Gabriel, don't you? Quiet man, always sat in the back corner. Gentle hands. Said he used to be a carpenter." The older woman nodded slowly. "Of course I remember Gabriel. Sweet man. I was so sorry to hear about his passing." "When did you hear about his passing?" Martinez asked. "Yesterday morning. Father Rodriguez from St. Mary's called to let us know. Gabriel had listed the soup kitchen as his emergency contact. Apparently, he had no family." Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Yesterday morning was before Gabriel had appeared at her door, before their conversation about angels and second chances, before he'd carved the cross that Martinez was still examining with growing confusion. "Detective," Mrs. Chen continued, "may I see that for a moment?" Martinez handed over the wooden cross. Mrs. Chen held it up to the light, her weathered fingers tracing the intricate patterns carved into its surface. "This is beautiful work," she murmured. "Gabriel was talented, but I've never seen him carve anything this detailed." She paused, studying it more closely. "Actually, this carving style reminds me of something. My grandmother had a cross very similar to this, from the old country. She always said it was made by monks who knew the old ways." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you saying?" Mrs. Chen looked between Sarah and Detective Martinez, her expression thoughtful and strangely peaceful. "I'm saying that sometimes the boundaries between this world and whatever comes next aren't as solid as we like to think." The soup kitchen felt different that Tuesday evening. Clara noticed it the moment she stepped through the familiar doors, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, like the air itself was holding its breath. The usual chatter seemed muted, and even Mrs. Henderson's normally boisterous laugh carried an undertone of something Clara couldn't quite identify. She tied her apron with practiced efficiency, scanning the room for Samuel's weathered face among the early arrivals. He wasn't there. A knot of worry tightened in her stomach as she began ladling soup into bowls, each absent moment stretching her anxiety thinner. "He'll be here," she whispered to herself, forcing a smile for Mr. Peterson, who shuffled forward with his usual grateful nod. "He's probably just running late." But as the evening wore on, and the line of hungry souls dwindled to its final few stragglers, Samuel's empty chair at table 3 seemed to mock her optimism. Clara found herself glancing toward the door every few seconds, willing his familiar silhouette to appear against the darkening street beyond. "You seem distracted tonight," Mrs. Henderson observed, appearing beside her with a knowing look. "Waiting for someone special?" Clara's cheeks flushed. "Just, there's a regular who hasn't shown up. Samuel. I'm worried about him." "The quiet man with the silver beard? Sits by himself, always says thank you like he means it?" Mrs. Henderson's expression softened. "I know the one. You've grown quite fond of him, haven't you?" The simple question unleashed a flood of emotions Clara had been trying to suppress. In the weeks since their first real conversation, Samuel had become something she couldn't quite name. Not quite a friend, not quite a confidant, but someone whose presence had begun to feel essential in ways that frightened her. "He listens," Clara said finally, "really listens. And when he talks—" She paused, struggling to articulate the inexplicable comfort she found in his words. "It's like he sees things the rest of us miss." Mrs. Henderson studied her with eyes that held decades of wisdom. "Some people have that gift, the ability to carry light into dark places." She squeezed Clara's shoulder gently. "Why don't you take a walk? Check the usual spots where the homeless gather. Sometimes our regulars just need a little extra care." The October air bit at Clara's cheeks as she stepped outside, autumn's chill carrying the scent of dying leaves and distant wood smoke. She pulled her coat tighter and began walking toward the cluster of abandoned buildings where she'd seen other soup kitchen regulars take shelter. Her footsteps echoed against empty storefronts and boarded windows, each shadow potentially hiding Samuel's familiar form. She called his name softly, not wanting to startle anyone who might be sleeping rough in doorways or alcoves. "Samuel, are you out here?" A rustling sound from an alley between 2 derelict buildings made her heart leap. She hurried toward it, hope and fear warring in her chest. But instead of Samuel, she found a stray cat picking through an overturned trash can, its green eyes reflecting the distant streetlight like tiny mirrors. 3 blocks later, near the old railway bridge, she spotted a small encampment of cardboard shelters and shopping carts. A woman with graying hair looked up as Clara approached, her face wary but not unkind. "I'm looking for Samuel," Clara said, keeping her voice gentle. "Older man, silver beard, usually comes to the soup kitchen on Maple Street." Recognition flickered in the woman's eyes. "Haven't seen him for a couple days. But then Samuel comes and goes like the wind, never stays in one place too long. Do you know where he might be?" The woman shrugged, but her expression held a hint of concern. "Could be anywhere. Sometimes he heads down to the river when he needs to think, or up to the old cathedral ruins on 5th Street. He likes quiet places." Clara thanked her and continued her search, each empty location adding weight to the growing dread in her stomach. The cathedral ruins stood like broken teeth against the night sky, their Gothic arches reaching towards stars that seemed unusually bright. She climbed the crumbling steps, calling Samuel's name into the shadows. Nothing. By the time she made it back to the soup kitchen, her hope had crystallized into genuine fear. Mrs. Henderson was stacking chairs, preparing to close for the evening. "Any luck?" the older woman asked, though Clara's expression had already provided the answer. "No sign of him anywhere." Clara's voice cracked slightly. "What if something's happened? What if he's hurt or sick or—" "Now don't go borrowing trouble," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "Samuel strikes me as someone who can take care of himself. He'll turn up." But as Clara drove home through streets that suddenly felt too empty, too quiet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Samuel's absence wasn't just disappointing, It felt like a piece of her newly rebuilt world had simply vanished, leaving behind a void that seemed to echo with all her old fears about abandonment and loss. The winter storm hit without warning, turning the city into a maze of ice and shadows. Sarah pulled her coat tighter as she made her way to the soup kitchen, her breath forming crystalline clouds in the bitter air. The streets were nearly empty, but she knew those who needed warmth the most would still venture out into the night. She hadn't seen Marcus in 3 days. The thought gnawed at her as she unlocked the kitchen doors, flipping on lights that cast harsh fluorescent glare across empty tables. Usually, he was among the first to arrive, his weathered hands helping her arrange chairs and set out bowls. His absence felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. Maybe he found somewhere warm to stay, she whispered to herself. But the words felt hollow. Marcus wasn't the type to simply disappear. In the months since their first meeting, he had become as reliable as sunrise, always there with his gentle wisdom and knowing eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. The door chimed as the first guests began arriving, stamping snow from their boots and grateful for the refuge. Sarah forced herself to smile, to focus on ladling soup and cutting bread, but her gaze kept drifting to the entrance. Each time someone new walked through, her heart would leap, only to sink when it wasn't his familiar silhouette. "You looking for Marcus?" Old Pete shuffled up to the serving counter, his roomy eyes sharp with concern. "Haven't seen him since Tuesday. Word is he was asking around about some girl in trouble, real urgent-like." Sarah's ladle paused mid-air. "What kind of trouble?" "The dangerous kind. You know how he is about helping folks, especially the lost ones. Maybe got himself mixed up in something he couldn't handle." The soup kitchen seemed to blur around her as Pete's words sank in. Marcus had a reputation among the homeless community for finding people who had given up on being found, for talking down those standing on bridges, for somehow knowing exactly where to be when someone needed salvation. But what if this time, his compassion had led him into harm's way? After closing, Sarah walked the streets she knew he frequented. The storm had intensified, turning the world into a hostile landscape of biting wind and stinging snow. She checked the abandoned building where he sometimes sheltered, the 24-hour diner where he nursed coffee when he had spare change. The park benches he claimed were surprisingly comfortable if you knew how to position yourself just right. Nothing. It was as if he had simply vanished. 2 blocks from the shelter, she heard it, a sound that made her blood freeze. A woman's voice crying out in terror, followed by harsh male laughter. Sarah's feet moved before her mind could process the danger, carrying her toward an alley where shadows writhed in the dim glow of a distant streetlight. 3 men had cornered a young girl against a brick wall. She couldn't have been more than 16, her thin frame shaking with cold and fear. Sarah's hand fumbled for her phone, but before she could dial, a figure emerged from the deeper darkness. "Let her go." Marcus's voice carried a weight that seemed to push against the storm itself. He looked different somehow, taller, more substantial, as if the night had given him strength instead of wearing him down. The men turned, sneering at what they saw as an easy target. "Walk away, old man. This isn't your concern." "Everything is my concern." Marcus stepped closer, and Sarah felt the strangest sensation. The air around him seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. "She's under my protection now." The largest of the 3 men laughed and swung a fist toward Marcus's face. What happened next defied explanation. The man's punch stopped mid-air, his entire body freezing as if time itself had paused. His companions backed away, eyes wide with sudden terror. "What the hell?" Marcus's voice had changed, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Sarah's chest. "And remember nothing of this night, except the wisdom to choose better paths." The men fled, leaving behind only the echo of their footsteps on wet pavement. Marcus knelt beside the girl, his hands hovering over her without quite touching, and Sarah watched in amazement as the bruises on her face began to fade. "Sarah." He looked up, unsurprised to find her watching from the alley mouth. "I wondered when you would see." She approached slowly, her mind struggling to process what she had witnessed. What are you? Someone who has been waiting a very long time for you to be ready for the truth. He helped the girl to her feet, and she walked away with steady steps, a small smile replacing her earlier terror. The question is, are you? The storm began to quiet around them, snowflakes falling like stars, and Sarah realized that everything she thought she knew about the world was about to change forever. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before Sarah, each fluorescent light casting harsh shadows that seemed to mock her desperate prayers. 3 days had passed since Marcus collapsed at the soup kitchen. 3 days of watching machines breathe for him while doctors spoke in hushed tones about brain activity and slim chances. She hadn't left his side except when the nurses forced her to. The other volunteers from the kitchen had come and gone, leaving flowers and awkward condolences, but Sarah remained. Something deep in her chest insisted that leaving meant giving up, and she'd done enough of that for one lifetime. You should go home, Dr. Reeves said softly, appearing beside her chair for the 4th time that day. Get some real sleep. We'll call if anything changes. Sarah shook her head, never taking her eyes off Marcus's still form. He doesn't have anyone else. What about you? Don't you have family who are worried? The question hit harder than intended. Sarah's sister had called twice, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly concerned, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to return them. How could she explain that she was keeping vigil for a homeless man who might be an angel, that in the past few weeks, her entire understanding of faith and purpose had reshuffled itself around his quiet presence? I'm exactly where I need to be, she said. Dr. Reeves lingered a moment longer before moving on to other patients, other crises. Sarah pulled her chair closer to the bed and took Marcus's hand in hers. His skin was warm, which felt like the only miracle she could count on anymore. I've been thinking about what you said, she whispered, about angels walking among us. I used to think that if they existed, they'd be obvious somehow, glowing or floating or at least wearing better clothes. A soft laugh escaped her throat. But you never claimed to be anything special, did you? You just showed up every day and let people see you, really see you. The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm, the only response she received. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to pray, but the words felt clumsy and inadequate. Instead, she found herself simply talking, letting her thoughts flow freely. After Emma died, I thought God had abandoned me, or maybe I abandoned him. I couldn't understand why someone so pure and innocent had to suffer while people who caused pain got to keep living. It seemed like proof that the universe was random and cruel. She opened her eyes and studied Marcus's face, searching for any sign of consciousness. But watching you these past weeks, seeing how you treated everyone with such kindness, it made me wonder if I was looking for the wrong kind of proof. Maybe miracles aren't about stopping bad things from happening. Maybe they're about what we choose to do when they happen anyway. A nurse entered quietly to check the machines, offering Sarah a sympathetic smile before leaving them alone again. The afternoon sun slanted through the window, casting golden rectangles across the white sheets. Remember that day when Mrs. Henderson came to the kitchen crying because her son wouldn't return her calls? Sarah continued. You didn't try to fix it or give her advice. You just sat with her and let her talk. And when she left, she was smiling. That's not normal, Marcus. Normal people don't have that kind of effect. She squeezed his hand gently. I think you've been trying to show me something about hope, not the desperate kind that demands guarantees, but the quiet kind that keeps showing up even when everything looks impossible. The door opened again, and Sarah looked up expecting another nurse. Instead, Father Miguel from the local parish entered, carrying a small leather book. I heard about Marcus, he said softly. Thought you might appreciate some company. Sarah nodded, grateful for his presence. Father Miguel had been at the soup kitchen the day Marcus collapsed, had helped perform CPR while they waited for the ambulance. Has he always been so? Father Miguel paused, searching for words as he took the chair beside her. There's something different about him, isn't there? The way people respond to him. You feel it too? I've been a priest for 30 years, he said quietly. I've learned to recognize when I'm in the presence of something holy, It doesn't always look the way we expect." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, both watching the gentle rise and fall of Marcus's chest. Finally, Father Miguel opened his book. "Would you mind if I read something?" Sarah shook her head, and his voice filled the small room with words about faith and hope and love enduring all things. As he read, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the grip fear had maintained for so long. When he finished, she realized she was crying, but for the first time in months, the tears felt like relief rather than despair. "Whatever happens," Father Miguel said gently, "you found your way back to believing. I can see it in your face." The morning light filtered through the hospital's waiting room windows like a prayer made visible. Sarah had been sitting in the same plastic chair for 18 hours, her vigil interrupted only by nurses offering coffee she couldn't taste and updates that said nothing at all. Marcus remained in surgery, his body fighting to repair what the drunk driver had shattered. She pressed her palms against her tired eyes, trying to push away the cruel irony. After everything they'd been through, after finding each other again in their shared grief, after daring to hope for something beautiful, the universe seemed determined to strip away everything she loved, Sarah. The voice was gentle, familiar. She looked up to find Gabriel standing before her, but not the Gabriel she knew from the soup kitchen, gone with the threadbare clothes and weathered appearance. He wore simple jeans and a white shirt that seemed to hold its own light, and his presence filled the sterile waiting room with something that felt like home. "I don't understand," she whispered, though part of her did. The part that had always known there was something different about him, something that defied explanation. Gabriel settled into the chair beside her, and she caught the scent of rain and starlight. "You've been carrying so much pain, Sarah. Even before Emma, you were searching for something, some proof that love matters, that suffering has purpose." Tears she thought she'd exhausted found their way down her cheeks. "Are you going to tell me this is all part of some grand plan? That Emma's death and now this, that it all means something?" No. His answer surprised her. Some things just break, cars crash, children get sick, hearts stop beating. The world is full of fractures that have nothing to do with divine will. Then what's the point? The words came out raw, broken. "If you're what I think you are, if you're an angel, then why didn't you save her? Why aren't you in there right now healing Marcus?" Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunrise paint the windows gold. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Sarah shook her head. "I see a woman who lost her daughter and chose to feed strangers. I see someone who found love again after her heart was destroyed. I see you sitting here, terrified and furious and still hoping." He turned to face her, and his eyes held depths like the night sky. "That's the miracle, Sarah. Not divine intervention stopping every tragedy, but humans choosing light in the darkness anyway. I can't do this again," she said. "I can't lose him too." "You might." The honesty in his voice was both terrible and comforting. "I can't promise you won't, but I can promise you're not alone in whatever comes." A doctor emerged from the surgical ward, still in scrubs, pulling off his surgical cap. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as he approached. "Miss Chen, I'm Dr. Rodriguez. Mr. Williams is out of surgery." The words that followed came through a haze of relief and terror. Successful surgery, significant injuries but all repairable, long recovery ahead, stable condition. The medical terminology washed over her like a tide, and through it all, Gabriel's steady presence anchored her. When the doctor finished, Sarah found herself laughing and crying simultaneously, a sound like breaking glass and church bells. "Can I see him? He's in recovery now, still sedated. Give us about an hour to get him settled in ICU, then you can visit briefly." After the doctor left, Sarah turned to Gabriel, but the chair beside her was empty. Panic fluttered in her chest until she spotted him by the windows, silhouetted against the morning light. "You're leaving," she said, joining him. "My work here is finished." "Your work?" Gabriel smiled, and for a moment she saw him as he truly was. Not human, but something vast and luminous wearing human form like a carefully crafted disguise. Sometimes we're sent to save people. Sometimes we're sent to heal them, but mostly we're sent to witness. Witness what? The way you love despite loss. The way Marcus found hope in helping others after his wife died. The way both of you chose each other even when choosing anything felt impossible. He touched her shoulder gently. The way you'll choose to keep going, whatever comes next. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a settling like pieces finding their proper places. Will I see you again? Look for me in every stranger you help, every kindness you show, every moment you choose hope over despair. Gabriel stepped back, and with each step, he seemed to become more translucent, more light than substance. Take care of each other, Sarah. The world needs more love like yours. And then, he was gone, leaving only the scent of rain and the absolute certainty that some angels walk among us wearing human faces, waiting for us to recognize the divine in the everyday act of refusing to surrender to darkness. The morning light filtered through the hospital's grimy windows as Sarah sat beside Marcus's bed, her hand wrapped around his weathered fingers. 3 days had passed since the accident, and the doctor's words still echoed in her mind like a funeral dirge. Massive internal bleeding, traumatic brain injury. They were doing everything they could, but she should prepare herself. She'd barely left his side, surviving on vending machine coffee and the sandwiches that Dolores from the soup kitchen brought by. The other volunteers had rallied around her, taking shifts so the kitchen could stay open, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to care about anything beyond the steady beep of Marcus's heart monitor. "You can't leave me," she whispered, brushing a strand of grey hair from his forehead. "Not when I'm just beginning to understand." The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent months helping Marcus, believing she was the one offering salvation to a broken man. Now she realized how completely backwards she'd had it. He'd been the one saving her all along, pulling her from the depths of despair with his gentle wisdom and inexplicable ability to appear exactly when she needed him most. Dr. Reeves entered quietly, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Chen, could I speak with you for a moment?" Sarah's heart clenched. She'd learned to read the subtle variations in the medical staff's faces. This wasn't good news. In the hallway, Dr. Reeves pulled out Marcus's chart, though he barely glanced at it. "I wanted to prepare you. His brain activity has decreased significantly over the last 12 hours. We're seeing signs that his body is beginning to shut down." The words hit her like physical blows. "How long?" "It's difficult to say. Could be hours, could be days. I'm sorry." Sarah nodded numbly and returned to Marcus's room. She pulled her chair closer to his bed and took his hand again, noticing how much colder it felt than before. "I keep thinking about that night," she said softly. "When I was standing on the bridge, ready to... You remember, you appeared out of nowhere like you always do. And you said something that's been haunting me ever since." She paused, watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. "You said everyone has a purpose, even when they can't see it, especially then. I thought you were talking about me, about finding meaning after losing Emma. But what if you were talking about yourself? What if your purpose was to save broken people like me? And now," her voice cracked, "now that you've saved me, you're ready to go?" The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm, but she could swear she felt his fingers twitch slightly in her grasp. "I need you to know something," she continued, tears flowing freely now. "That night at my apartment, when you knew about the tea Emma loved, when you somehow knew exactly what I needed to hear about forgiveness, I figured it out, Marcus. I know what you are." The words hung in the air like a prayer. "I don't know how it works, or why someone like me deserved this kind of grace. But I know you're not just some homeless man who happened into my life. Angels walk among us, don't they? Disguised as ordinary people, showing up exactly when and where they're needed most." Outside, storm clouds were gathering, the same dark gray as the day she'd lost Emma. Sarah watched them through the window, remembering how that storm had felt like the end of everything. Now, facing another ending, she felt something different. Not acceptance exactly, but a strange sort of peace. "If you have to go," she whispered, "I understand. I won't ask you to stay for my sake, but I need you to know that you didn't fail. Whatever mission brought you to me, you succeeded. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved." She squeezed his hand tighter, feeling the faintest warmth still pulsing beneath his skin. "And I'm going to be okay. Not perfect, not completely healed, but okay. I'm going to keep working at the soup kitchen. I'm going to look for other people who need the kind of help you gave me. Maybe that's how this works. Maybe we're all supposed to pass it along." Thunder rumbled in the distance, but Sarah didn't flinch. She'd learned that storms eventually passed, that even the darkest nights gave way to morning light. Marcus had taught her that. As evening settled over the hospital, Sarah remained at his bedside, holding his hand and telling him stories about Emma, about the good memories she'd finally learned to cherish instead of fear. She spoke about her plans for the future, the small acts of kindness she wanted to perform in his honor. She didn't know if he could hear her, but somehow that didn't matter. The love was real, the gratitude was real, and maybe that was enough. The heart monitor's rhythm began to slow. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor buzzed overhead as Sarah sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since grown cold. 3 days had passed since Marcus collapsed at the soup kitchen, and the doctors still had no answers. His condition remained stable but mysterious. All his vital signs were normal, yet he wouldn't wake up. She'd barely left his side, catching fragments of sleep in the chair beside his bed. The nurses had grown accustomed to her presence, offering gentle smiles and extra blankets. They assumed she was family, and Sarah didn't correct them. In ways she was only beginning to understand, Marcus had become more important to her than most of her blood relatives. "You should go home," Dr. Rodriguez said, appearing beside her with the quiet efficiency that marked his rounds. "Get some real rest. We'll call if there's any change." Sarah shook her head. "I can't leave him alone." The doctor's expression softened. "He's not alone. The staff checks on him every hour, and that's not what I mean." Sarah's voice caught. "He has no one else. No family, no emergency contacts, just me." Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a chair beside her. "Tell me about him. What's his story?" For a moment, Sarah considered sharing everything. The impossible warmth that radiated from Marcus's touch, the way her grief had begun to heal in his presence, the growing certainty that he was something more than human. Instead, she chose simpler truths. "He's kind, genuinely kind, in a way that's rare. He listens without judgment, helps without expecting anything in return. She paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound insane. "He's been my anchor these past few months." The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes we meet people who change our perspective entirely. I've seen it happen. Patients who fight harder because of one special person, families who find strength they didn't know they possessed." After he left, Sarah returned to Marcus's room. The machines monitoring his heart rate and breathing provided a steady rhythm in the quiet space. She pulled her chair closer to his bed and took his hand. Even unconscious, his skin carried that inexplicable warmth. "I don't know if you can hear me," she whispered, "but I need you to wake up. I know that's selfish. Maybe you're supposed to move on, help someone else who needs you, but I'm not ready to say goodbye." Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Any change? The whole kitchen crew is asking about him." Sarah typed back, "Still the same. Thanks for covering my shifts. Don't worry about that. Just focus on being there for him." The afternoon stretched into evening, and Sarah found herself talking to Marcus about everything and nothing. Her childhood, her marriage to David, her fears about the future. She'd never been someone who talked to herself or to unconscious people, but something about his presence made the words flow easily. "Strangest part," she said as the sun set outside his window, "is that I'm not angry anymore. Not at God, not at the universe, not even at the drunk driver who killed David. I should be furious that you're lying here like this, but instead I feel peaceful, like this is part of something bigger that I'm supposed to trust." A soft knock interrupted her monologue. She turned to find a woman in her 60s standing in the doorway, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a volunteer badge from the hospital. "Excuse me, dear. I hope I'm not intruding. I'm Margaret from Pastoral Care." The woman's voice carried the same quality of warmth that Sarah had come to associate with Marcus. "The nurses mentioned you've been keeping vigil here. I wanted to see if you needed anything. Someone to talk to, perhaps?" Sarah studied the woman's face. There was something familiar about her eyes, the way they seemed to hold depths of understanding that went beyond typical human experience. "Are you?" Sarah began, then stopped herself. How could she ask if someone was an angel? Margaret smiled knowingly and entered the room. "I'm a friend, like him." She moved to Marcus's other side and placed a gentle hand on his forehead. "He's not ill, you know. He's resting, gathering strength for what comes next." "What comes next?" "That depends partly on you," Margaret said, her gaze meeting Sarah's across the bed. "On whether you're ready to accept your role in this story. I don't understand. You will." Faith isn't about understanding everything at once. It's about trusting that the pieces will make sense when you need them to. Margaret squeezed Marcus's hand gently. He chose well when he chose to help you. Your heart is exactly what this world needs more of. As quickly as she'd appeared, Margaret was gone, leaving only the faint scent of jasmine and the growing certainty in Sarah's chest that everything was about to change. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before Sarah, its fluorescent lights casting everything in harsh, unforgiving clarity. She'd been here for 6 hours, ever since the call came through. Marcus had collapsed at the shelter during dinner service, his frail body finally succumbing to whatever had been eating away at him for weeks. Dr. Patel emerged from the room, her expression carefully neutral. "Miss Chen, we need to talk." Sarah's hands trembled as she followed the doctor to a small consultation room. Through the window, she could see the city lights twinkling like fallen stars, oblivious to the drama unfolding within these sterile walls. "Your friend is very sick," Dr. Patel began, settling into the chair across from her. "His organs are shutting down. We've made him comfortable, but there's nothing more we can do medically." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. "How long?" "Hours. Maybe a day or two at most." The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm sorry. Is there family we should contact?" Sarah shook her head, her throat too tight to speak. Marcus had no one except her, just as she'd had no one except him when her world had crumbled. The symmetry was cruel. She found him propped up in the hospital bed, looking smaller somehow, as if the illness was erasing him piece by piece. His eyes were closed, but when she pulled the chair closer, they fluttered open. "Sarah." His voice was barely a whisper. "You came." "Of course I came." She took his weathered hand in hers, startled by how cold it felt. "I'm not going anywhere." Marcus smiled, that same enigmatic expression she'd seen countless times over the past months. "You know, don't you? You've always known." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd suspected, felt it in her bones during those moments when Marcus seemed to see straight through to her soul, when his presence brought her a peace she couldn't explain. But suspecting and knowing were different creatures entirely. "I don't understand what you're asking me." "Yes, you do." His grip tightened slightly. "The day we met, you were planning to end your pain. You'd given up entirely, but something stopped you from walking into that river." She had never told him about that day, about standing on the bridge with Emma's suicide note clutched in her hand, about the overwhelming urge to follow her daughter into whatever darkness waited beyond. She'd never mentioned how she'd turned away at the last second and found herself at the soup kitchen instead, drawn by a compulsion she couldn't name. "How do you—" "Because I was sent to find you." Marcus's eyes held depths that seemed impossible in such a frail frame. "Your daughter asked for help." The world tilted sideways. Sarah felt as though she was falling through space, unmoored from everything solid. "That's not possible." "She's been watching over you, Sarah, worried about you. When you stood on that bridge, When your grief threatened to pull you under permanently, she begged for intervention. She couldn't bear the thought of losing you too, of having your pain be the thing that finally broke you beyond repair. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, hot and endless. Emma's dead. She's been dead for 8 months. Death isn't an ending. Marcus struggled to sit up straighter, and Sarah moved to help him. It's a transformation. She exists differently now, but she exists. And her love for you hasn't dimmed one bit. You're telling me you're an angel. The words felt absurd leaving her lips, but even as she spoke them, a part of her soul recognized their truth. I'm telling you that love is the most powerful force in any universe, and sometimes it reaches across impossible distances to save what matters most. Marcus coughed, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of his chest. Your daughter's love called me to you. My job was to help you remember that life is still worth living, that pain doesn't have to be permanent. Sarah thought of all their conversations, all the moments when Marcus had somehow known exactly what to say, when his presence had been the only thing standing between her and complete despair. She thought of the gradual healing that had taken place over months of serving others, of how purpose had slowly returned to her days. But now you're dying. This body is dying, Marcus corrected. My work here is finished. You're going to be okay, Sarah. You're going to live and love and find meaning again. You're going to help other people the way you've been helped. The machines around them beeped steadily, marking time like a metronome. Outside, dawn was beginning to creep across the sky, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. I'm not ready to lose you too. Marcus squeezed her hand one final time. You're not losing anyone. We're all connected, Sarah. Emma, me, you, everyone you'll touch with the love you've learned to give again. Death can't sever those bonds. His eyes began to close, and Sarah felt the moment approaching like an incoming tide. The morning light filtered through the hospital curtains like a gentle benediction, casting everything in soft gold. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment she forgot where she was. Then the memories came flooding back, the accident, the darkness, and Thomas's voice calling her back from whatever precipice she'd been standing on. She turned her head slowly, expecting to see him in the chair beside her bed, but found only her sister Maya instead. Maya's eyes were red-rimmed but bright with relief. Hey, Maya whispered, reaching for Sarah's hand. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, Sarah croaked, her throat dry as sandpaper. Where's Thomas? Maya's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral. Who's Thomas? Sarah's heart skipped. The homeless man from the soup kitchen. He was here last night. He stayed with me. She struggled to sit up, panic rising in her chest. Maya, where is he? Sarah, honey, you've been unconscious for 2 days. No one's been allowed in except family. Maya squeezed her hand gently. The doctor said you might be confused when you woke up. Head injuries can... No. Sarah's voice was stronger now, more insistent. He was here. We talked about David, about choices, about... She trailed off, seeing the concern deepening in her sister's eyes. I'm not confused. But even as she said it, doubt began to creep in. The conversation with Thomas felt vivid, more real than real, but the hospital room around her suggested otherwise. Had it been a dream? A hallucination brought on by trauma? Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand, and a professional smile on her face. Good to see you awake, Sarah. You gave us quite a scare. She moved to check Sarah's pupils with a small flashlight. How's the pain level? Manageable, Sarah lied, though her head felt like it was splitting. Doctor, was there a man here last night? An older gentleman, homeless? Dr. Martinez exchanged a glance with Maya. I'm afraid not. Hospital policy is very strict about visitors, especially in the ICU, only immediate family. She made a note on her chart. It's not uncommon to experience vivid dreams or hallucinations after this type of trauma. Your brain was working hard to heal itself. Sarah wanted to argue, to insist that what she'd experienced was real, but the certainty was already beginning to fray at the edges. Maybe they were right. Maybe her grieving mind had conjured Thomas's presence when she needed it most. Over the next few hours, a steady stream of visitors filtered through her room. Friends from work, neighbors, people from the soup kitchen who'd heard about the accident. Mrs. Chen from the shelter brought flowers and tears of relief. "We were so worried," she said, patting Sarah's hand. "You've become such an important part of our little family." But no one mentioned Thomas. When Sarah asked Mrs. Chen about him, the older woman looked puzzled. "Thomas? I don't think we have anyone by that name registered with us right now. Are you sure that's his name?" Sarah's heart sank. Older man, kind eyes, always wears a brown coat. He comes in regularly for meals. Mrs. Chen shook her head slowly. "I'm sorry, dear, that doesn't ring a bell, but you know how it is. Some folks prefer to keep to themselves, don't always give their real names." After Mrs. Chen left, Sarah lay in the gathering twilight, staring at the ceiling. Had she imagined it all? The conversations, the gentle wisdom, the sense of peace that had settled over her when Thomas spoke? It felt so real, so vivid. She could still hear his voice, still remember the warmth in his eyes. Maya returned as evening fell, carrying takeout containers and a determined expression. "Thought you might be sick of hospital food by now." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, before Maya spoke again. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about this Thomas person." Sarah looked up hopefully. "Even if he wasn't real," Maya continued carefully, "maybe that doesn't make what you experienced any less meaningful. Sometimes our minds give us exactly what we need to heal, even if we can't explain how or why." Sarah considered this as she picked at her food. "The things he said to me, they felt like more than just my own thoughts. Maybe they were." Maya's voice was gentle. "Maybe they came from somewhere deeper. From David, from your own wisdom, from whatever force in the universe wants you to heal and be whole again." As night deepened outside her window, Sarah found herself thinking about faith and miracles, about the thin places where the divine might touch the ordinary world. Whether Thomas had been real or a product of her traumatized mind, the peace she'd found in that darkness felt genuine. The sense of forgiveness, of possibility, of love that transcended even death. Those things remained, solid and unshakable. Perhaps that was miracle enough. The rain had stopped by the time Sarah reached the cemetery, but the October air still carried that heavy dampness that seemed to seep into her bones. She clutched the small bouquet of white roses, Emma's favorite, and walked slowly along the familiar path. 6 months. It felt like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. She knelt beside the small headstone, brushing away the fallen leaves that had gathered at its base. "Hey, baby girl," she whispered, her voice catching slightly. "Mama's here." The words came easier now than they had in those first terrible weeks. She told Emma about the soup kitchen, about the new volunteers who had joined them, about how Mrs. Henderson's arthritis was acting up again. Simple things, daily things, the kind of mundane details that had once filled their evenings together. "I met someone," she said finally, the words hanging in the cool air. "I think you'd like him. He's different, special." She paused, remembering Gabriel's gentle smile, the way his presence seemed to quiet the storm that had raged inside her for so long. "I was so angry, Em, so lost. But he helped me find my way back." A gentle breeze stirred the roses, and Sarah could have sworn she felt a warmth brush against her cheek. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine it was Emma's small hand, the way she used to reach up to touch Sarah's face when she was upset. "I love you so much," she whispered. "I always will." The drive back to the soup kitchen passed in a blur of autumn colors. Sarah had promised Gabriel she'd help with the dinner service, though part of her wondered if he'd even be there. Their conversation the night before had left her with more questions than answers, but also with something she hadn't felt in months: hope. She found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, stirring a massive pot of what smelled like his incredible vegetable stew. The sight of him, so solid and present and real, made her heart skip. "How did it go?" he asked softly, looking up from his work. Somehow, without her having to say anything, he knew where she'd been. Better than usual, she admitted, tying on her apron. It felt peaceful. He nodded, understanding in a way that went beyond words. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, falling into the rhythm they developed over the past weeks. Sarah found herself stealing glances at him, noting the careful way he handled the food, the genuine warmth in his interactions with the other volunteers. "Gabriel," she said during a quiet moment, "last night, when you said you were here to help me heal, what did you mean exactly?" He set down his ladle, turning to face her fully. For a moment, something flickered across his features, an expression almost too bright to look at directly. Then it settled back into his familiar, gentle smile. "Sometimes people find themselves in such deep darkness that they can't see the way out," he said carefully. "When that happens, they need someone to walk alongside them, to remind them that light still exists. And that's what you do, help people find the light." "It's what I've always done," he said. And there was something in his voice, a weight that spoke of centuries rather than years. "Though I've never encountered someone quite like you, Sarah. Your capacity for love, even in the face of such loss, it's extraordinary." The dinner service began before she could ask more questions, and soon they were swept up in the familiar chaos of serving meals and offering comfort to those who needed it most. Sarah watched Gabriel move through the crowd, noting how he seemed to know exactly what each person needed, a kind word for the veteran who struggled with nightmares, a gentle touch for the elderly woman who rarely spoke, patient attention for the young man who couldn't stop talking about his dreams of getting clean. It was during the cleanup that Mrs. Patterson, one of their regular guests, approached Sarah with tears in her eyes. "I wanted to thank you," the older woman said, gripping Sarah's hands. "That friend of yours, Gabriel, he helped me get into a program. I start on Monday. After 3 years on the streets, I'm going home." Sarah's breath caught. "That's wonderful, Mrs. Patterson. I'm so happy for you." "He said you were the one who gave him the idea," Mrs. Patterson continued. "Said you saw something in me worth saving." As the woman walked away, Sarah turned to find Gabriel watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe. Or something deeper. "You did that?" she asked. "We did that," he corrected gently. "Your compassion opens doors, Sarah. It always has. You just forgot for a while." Standing there in the empty kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of another evening spent feeding both bodies and souls, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. The grief was still there. It always would be. But alongside it, something new was growing. Something that felt suspiciously like faith. The morning light filtered through the kitchen window as Sarah stirred honey into her tea, watching the golden swirls dissolve into amber clarity. 3 months had passed since that impossible night when Marcus had saved Elena, since the moment her understanding of the world had cracked open like an egg to reveal something infinitely more beautiful and mysterious inside. Elena sat at the table, carefully coloring within the lines of a butterfly's wings, her tongue poking out in concentration. The child who had been taken from them and returned bore no memory of her ordeal, only an inexplicable fondness for drawing angels with kind eyes and weathered faces that looked remarkably like Marcus. "Mama, can we go see him today?" Elena asked without looking up from her artwork. She never had to specify who him was anymore. Sarah smiled, running her fingers through her daughter's silky hair. "After lunch, sweetheart. He's probably still sleeping." They'd found Marcus an apartment 6 weeks ago, a modest one-bedroom place 4 blocks from the shelter, where Sarah still volunteered. He'd protested at first, insisting he was meant to wander, that his kind weren't meant for permanence. But Sarah had worn him down with a persistence that surprised them both, and Elena's innocent question of "don't angels need somewhere to hang their wings?" had sealed the deal. The truth was, Sarah needed him close, not just for what he was, but for who he'd become to them. Family in a way that transcended blood or divine purpose. He was Elena's unlikely guardian angel who taught her chess and told her stories about stars. He was Sarah's anchor, the steady presence that had helped her rebuild not just her faith, but her capacity for hope. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Coffee later?" Want to hear about this guy I'm seeing? Sarah typed back a quick yes, marveling at how normal life could feel even when you carried the secret of angels in your pocket like a precious stone. The grief counseling group still met every Tuesday. Sarah still attended, but now she listened differently, hearing the pain that brought people to those folding chairs while also sensing the quiet moments of grace that flickered between the words. Last week, she'd watched a newcomer, a young father whose son had drowned, break down completely, and she'd seen something shift in the room. The way hands reached out, voices grew gentler, hearts opened wider. Maybe that was what miracles really looked like. Not divine intervention from above, but humanity remembering how to catch each other when they fell. "I'm done," Elena announced, holding up her picture. The butterfly's wings were a riot of purple and gold, and perched on a nearby flower was a small figure with outstretched arms. "It's beautiful, baby. Should we take it to Marcus?" Elena nodded enthusiastically, already scrambling down from her chair. They walked hand in hand through the familiar neighborhood, past Mrs. Chen's garden where the first spring flowers were pushing through the soil, past the coffee shop where Sarah had learned to smile at strangers again. The homeless shelter bustled with its usual afternoon energy, and Sarah waved to familiar faces, people whose stories she now knew, whose struggles had become part of her expanding definition of purpose. Marcus answered his door with paint-stained fingers and a bemused expression. He'd taken up watercolors, another sign of his growing attachment to this earthly existence. "We brought you something," Elena announced, thrusting her artwork toward him with the solemnity of a sacred offering. Marcus accepted the drawing with the reverence it deserved, studying it carefully. "This is magnificent, little star. Should I hang it next to the others?" Sarah looked around his sparse apartment, walls now decorated entirely with Elena's artwork. For a being who claimed to exist outside of time and earthly attachments, he'd certainly made exceptions. "I had the strangest dream last night," Marcus said softly, settling into his second-hand armchair while Elena immediately claimed his lap. "I dreamed I was being called away, reassigned to another place, another purpose." Sarah's heart clenched, but Marcus continued with a slight smile. "And in the dream, I told them I wasn't finished here yet. That my current assignment was ongoing." "What did they say?" Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Marcus's smile widened, and for just a moment, that otherworldly light flickered behind his eyes. "They said that love had always been the highest calling, and perhaps I was exactly where I needed to be." Elena looked up at him with the unwavering trust that only children possessed. "You're not going anywhere, right, Marcus?" "Not anywhere, little star. Not anywhere at all." As evening settled around them, Sarah realized that miracles weren't always about dramatic rescues or divine interventions. Sometimes they were as simple as choosing to stay, choosing to love, choosing to believe that broken things could be made whole again. Sometimes angels wore paint-stained fingers and lived in tiny apartments and became family in ways that rewrote every rule about heaven and earth. And sometimes that was more than enough.